Welcome to Season 2 of the More You Know Media and Tech Literacy series, produced by Independent Thinker, LLC. The More You Know Media and Tech Literacy series is a quarterly educational initiative that helps individuals and communities better understand the realities of today's digital ecosystem. In episode 15, we cover Sam Altman's trust issues at OpenAI. We turn the mic to Tommy and Gina for an insightful discussion about this topic.
It is Wednesday, July 8th, 2026. And right now in Memphis, Tennessee, there are 35 unlicensed methane gas turbines pumping thousands of tons of toxic pollutants into the air.
Yeah, right over a community that already suffers from, severe respiratory health disparities.
Exactly. And the really crazy part is those turbines aren't powering a factory. They aren't powering a traditional power plant. They are powering a sci-fi dream.
I mean, if you are listening to this and feeling a little overwhelmed by the sheer dizzying speed of the artificial intelligence industry right now, you are absolutely not alone.
Oh, definitely not. We are living in a moment where the digital ground is quite literally shifting under our feet on a daily basis.
It is completely relentless, and because the narrative is moving so fast, it can feel incredibly difficult to parse the grounded reality from all the carefully constructed corporate mythology.
Which is exactly why we are here. The mission for today's deep dive is to cut right through that daily noise, bypass all the Silicon Valley jargon, and get to the mechanical truth about the single most powerful force in tech today.
Right. We are talking about Sam Altman, his company OpenAI, and this massive, all-consuming race to build something called artificial general intelligence, or AGI.
And to do that, we are synthesizing three incredibly revealing pieces of recent journalism.
Yes. First, we have a really eye-opening Democracy Now! Interview with tech journalist Karen Howe, who has spent years documenting the physical footprint of the AI empire.
Which is fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And second, we've got a deep investigative piece from the New Yorker Radio Hour featuring Ronan Farrow and Andrew Morantz.
And finally, a huge bombshell recent report from The Guardian detailing OpenAI's unprecedented financial negotiations with the United States government.
We are pulling all of these threads together.
Yeah.
And I promise you, by the end of this deep dive, you are going to understand not just the geopolitical maneuvering happening behind closed doors, but the staggering physical costs of what some insiders call a quasi-religious pursuit.
Yeah, and ultimately we are going to ask why the architecture of our entire digital future might hinge entirely on the baseline trustworthiness of just one man.
So let's just jump right in. To truly understand this whole AI revolution, I feel like we first have to unpack the psychology of its chief architect.
Absolutely. The New Yorker investigation gives us this fascinating window into how Sam Altman views his own place in history.
Right, because he doesn't exactly see himself as just a regular tech CEO, does he?
No, not at all. Throughout the early days, before OpenAI was even an official entity, Altman was constantly comparing himself to Robert Oppenheimer.
Oh, wow. The father of the atomic bomb.
Exactly. In fact, in May of 2015, he emailed Elon Musk out of the blue to pitch what he explicitly called a Manhattan Project for AI.
Wait, if he is consciously framing himself as the next Oppenheimer, doesn't that inherently mean he knows the technology he is building has the potential to be, like, globally catastrophic?
You would think so, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Manhattan Project ended a world war, but it also birthed the perpetual threat of global nuclear annihilation. Why would top-tier scientists and investors be drawn to a pitch that basically promises existential terror?
Because that was exactly the hook. But here is the profound irony of Sam Altman. He is not Robert Oppenheimer.
Right, he isn't a scientist.
Exactly. He is not a generational coding genius who spends his nights inventing groundbreaking new algorithms. He is, first and foremost, a master pitchman.
Yeah, the New Yorker piece had a great quote for that, right?
Yeah, one person described him as the Michael Jordan of listening. He built his power by bringing together technical talent and massive capital, not by writing code.
Okay, let's unpack this. So he didn't build a tech empire by being the smartest coder in the room, but by being the ultimate chameleon.
That is exactly what he did.
It sounds like he essentially built a mirror, reflecting everyone's deepest fears and highest hopes back at them to get exactly what he wanted.
Well, think about when he was looking to form OpenAI. Google already had a monopoly on all the top AI research talent.
Right, you couldn't compete with him on salary or prestige back then.
Exactly. So Altman pitched apocalyptic fear. He essentially went to people who were genuinely freaked out by AI and said, hey, I am as scared as you are. We need to be the good guys.
Oh, I see. So it was like, regulate me. because the thing I'm building is so terrifying.
Yes. He formed a nonprofit specifically to attract brilliant minds who wanted to work for a righteous cause instead of a megacorporation.
That is wild.
And the reason why this matters so much mechanically is that this strategy wasn't just about launching a startup. It allowed Altman to personally define the public narrative of AI as an existential threat that only he had the foresight to manage.
So he positioned himself as the reluctant guardian holding the keys to a very dangerous future.
Exactly. And the specific fire they are trying to build is AGI.
Right, artificial general intelligence. And OpenAI defines AGI as highly autonomous systems that outperform humans in most economically valuable work.
Which is a very dry way of saying something massive.
Yeah, to put that in perspective for you listening right now, if you are commuting to a desk job, reading spreadsheets, writing code, or managing logistics, AGI is explicitly being designed to do your job better, faster, and infinitely cheaper.
And Karen Howe points out that within Silicon Valley, the pursuit of this technology has morphed into what she calls a quasi-religious belief.
Quasi-religious, how so?
Well, there is no concrete mathematical proof that true AGI is even possible. Yet the billions being spent are driven by pure, unshakable conviction.
It really is based on faith at this point.
Yeah, and within this modern religion, there are two warring factions, the boomers and the doomers.
Let's break those down because the philosophies are just wild. The boomers, they believe AGI will bring about this perfect, frictionless utopia.
Right, they talk about capturing the light cone of all economic value, which sounds insane.
It sounds like pure science fiction. But what they practically mean is that AI will eventually generate so much automated wealth across the globe and even the solar system that humans simply won't need to work.
Yeah, we will just receive massive universal cash payouts and live in a state of superabundance.
But then, on the absolute opposite end of the spectrum, you have the doomers.
Right, and the doomers view human intelligence as purely computational. They argue that human communication is incredibly flawed, slow, and biologically bottlenecked.
We are just inefficient machines to them.
Exactly. Therefore, once an AI system can communicate flawlessly and update its own code at the speed of light, it will rapidly evolve into a superior species.
And historically, on a planetary scale, superior species do not tend to share resources with inferior ones.
Right, so the doomers believe AGI's perfect communication will inevitably lead to humanity being replaced or just eliminated outright.
But here is the jarring disconnect. Whether these factions think AGI brings a utopian vacation or a literal apocalypse, they are selling this ethereal sci-fi dream of digital minds floating in the cloud.
Yeah, but the cloud isn't in the sky.
Exactly. The cloud is heavily anchored on the ground. It is made of steel, concrete, and copper.
It is a profoundly gritty industrial reality. The AI supply chain requires a staggering physical toll.
Because training these large language models requires server farms running at a maximum capacity, right?
Right, and those servers generate intense heat, which requires immense amounts of water for evaporative cooling systems.
And this brings us to what Karen Howe reported on, which is just shocking. Meta recently set up a shell company called Greater Kudu LLC in New Mexico.
Yeah, they did this specifically to obscure their identity while securing rights to build a data center that would drain the local community's fresh water.
Just deliberately bypassing immediate public scrutiny in a desert environment.
Exactly. And that brings us right back to Memphis, Tennessee, which we mentioned at the start.
Right. Elon Musk built his massive Colossus supercomputer there to train his AI, Grok.
And because the local power grid physically cannot supply the electricity required, he is powering the facility with those 35 unlicensed methane gas turbines.
So you literally have thousands of tons of toxic air pollutants being pumped into a vulnerable community that already suffers from a lack of clean air, just to train a chatbot.
Yeah. And because these data centers must run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to prevent the models from degrading, renewable energy like solar simply isn't consistent enough without massive grid-scale battery breakthroughs.
Which don't exist yet.
Right. This is exactly why we are seeing Sam Altman aggressively testifying before Congress, pushing to deregulate advanced nuclear power.
He is framing it under the guise of a clean energy transition, right?
Yeah, but mechanically it is simply because the AI industry needs an uninterrupted fire hose of electricity to feed these sprawling server farms.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Wait, so we are literally burning methane gas, quietly draining community aquifers in the desert, and lobbying to deregulate nuclear reactors right now, just so a handful of tech executives can chase a utopian sci-fi dream of superabundance.
It sounds absurd when you put it like that.
I mean, how is the underlying mechanism of this any different from a 19th century oil rush or gold rush?
What's fascinating here is the sheer contradiction of it all. You have tech leaders promising a frictionless digital technology that will supposedly elevate humanity, while they are actively extracting and degrading the very physical environment that humanity relies on to survive today.
It's a promise of a pristine post-scarcity future built entirely on a foundation of immediate, tangible destruction and resource extraction.
Exactly. And the scale of this physical need, the sheer amount of land, water, and power, is so astronomical that the United States is quite literally running out of space and grid capacity to house it all.
And that physical limitation is forcing these AI companies to stop acting like nimble little software startups.
Yeah, they have to start acting like sovereign nation states negotiating on the global stage.
I mean, the expansion is difficult to conceptualize until you look at the raw numbers. For example, OpenAI is looking to build a massive data center infrastructure in the United Arab Emirates.
Right. And why the UAE? Because they have state-backed energy grids, abundant capital, and way fewer environmental regulatory hurdles.
They're talking about proposed facilities that would be 7 times the size of Central Park and would consume as much electricity as the entire city of Miami, just for one computing cluster.
It is hard to even wrap your head around that scale.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this unyielding need for immense capital and physical infrastructure brings us to the recent Guardian bombshell.
Right, the government negotiations.
Now, just looking at the sheer political reality of these reports, and I want to be very clear to you listening, we're just parsing the facts on the ground here. We are not taking any political sides. The maneuvering is incredibly intense.
It really is. So, according to The Guardian, OpenAI is in early-stage talks to give the United States government a 5% equity stake in the company.
Which is unprecedented for a tech startup.
Totally. The pitch is to structure this through a sovereign wealth fund model similar to the Alaska Permanent Fund.
Right, for context, in Alaska, the state invests its oil revenues into a fund, and citizens actually receive a yearly dividend check.
Yes. So OpenAI is essentially floating the idea that AI, data, and compute could be treated as a national resource in the exact same way.
But the political maneuvering to control that potential wealth fund is currently dividing Washington, right?
Oh, absolutely. On one side, you have Senator Bernie Sanders, who has proposed a 50% tax on AI companies to fund a public sovereign wealth fund.
Yeah, on the other side.
Well, the incoming Trump administration recently announced the $500 billion Stargate project to dramatically boost AI infrastructure.
But it's mechanically important to note that this $500 billion is actually private investment from foreign entities like Japan's SoftBank, not U.S. taxpayer dollars.
Exactly. And Sam Altman is navigating right through the middle of all of this. A few years ago, he was publicly comparing Donald Trump to Hitler and warning of the dangers of his administration.
And now?
Now, he is standing right beside him to accelerate American AI development.
So rather than acting out of pure ideology, he seems to be engaging in regulatory arbitrage.
Yeah, just shifting alliances based entirely on who can clear the path for the physical infrastructure he needs.
He is forced into that regulatory arbitrage because the geopolitical landscape is shifting violently underneath him, right?
Definitely. Just look at the historical U.S. attempts to use export controls to cripple China's AI development.
Right, the China Initiative.
Yeah, for years, the U.S. implemented policies like the China Initiative. This was originally a Department of Justice program aimed at curbing economic espionage, but it mechanically resulted in the alienation and profiling of top-tier international grad students and researchers at American universities.
Right, researchers who historically came to the U.S., wanted to stay, and would have contributed to Silicon Valley's dominance, they ended up feeling targeted.
Yeah, so they left, they took their expertise back to China. It caused a massive self-inflicted brain drain in the American AI sector.
And the mechanical result of that brain drain is finally materializing today.
Big time. A Chinese company called Highflyer, utilizing that top-tier talent, recently built an incredibly powerful AI model called DeepSeek.
But what terrified Silicon Valley wasn't just that the model was good, right? It was how they built it.
Exactly. Due to U.S. export controls, Highflyer didn't have access to the latest, most powerful computer chips.
So they couldn't just throw hardware at the problem.
Right. Instead of brute forcing the training process with massive clusters of cutting-edge hardware, they used sheer algorithmic efficiency.
They employed architectures like mixture of experts, where only specific parts of the neural network activate for a given task, drastically reducing the computing power needed.
Yeah. And they built a world-class model for just $6 million.
Wait, just 6 million. That completely upends Silicon Valley's foundational narrative that you absolutely must spend tens of billions of dollars and scale at all costs to achieve breakthrough AI.
It shatters it entirely.
Wait, so if a foreign competitor can achieve world-class AI for a fraction of the cost just by writing more efficient code, then Silicon Valley's demand for trillions of dollars in nuclear reactors isn't actually a scientific necessity.
No, it's a business strategy.
Wow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see how Altman is navigating a deeply complex global board. He is utilizing the U.S. government's fear of falling behind China's efficient new models to block safety regulations at home.
While simultaneously leveraging Middle Eastern sovereign wealth to bypass the physical resource and energy limits of the United States.
Exactly. He is playing all sides to ensure his infrastructure gets built, regardless of the jurisdiction.
But that raises a massive red flag for democratic oversight. I mean, if an unrelated tech CEO is casually offering to give the U.S. government a 5% stake while simultaneously brokering infrastructure deals with foreign monarchies, who is actually in charge here?
That is the million or really trillion-dollar question.
Are we regulating AI, or is the AI industry literally buying a seat at the regulatory table?
Right, because if these private companies are negotiating directly with world leaders and extracting global resources on the scale of nation-states, the entire enterprise rests on a single point of failure.
Which is?
Can we actually trust the man at the top of the pyramid to tell the truth?
And this strategy of consolidating power and playing nation-states against each other requires an absolute, unshakable trust in the person brokering those deals.
Yeah.
And that trust is exactly what fractured during what they call the blip.
Oh, yes, the blip.
That was the moment a few years ago when Sam Altman was suddenly, shockingly fired by OpenAI's own board of directors, only to claw his way back into the CEO chair just days later.
Ronan Farrow spent a year investigating exactly what happened behind those closed doors. And what he found wasn't a single explosive smoking gun.
It wasn't like one massive financial crime or a dramatic technical failure.
No. Instead, he found a sprawling, pervasive pattern of Altman being, in the board's very careful words, not consistently candid.
It's the sheer volume of deceptions, from the mundane to the geopolitical. Farrow highlights this bizarre, absurd lie, where Altman apparently claimed to his colleagues that he was a champion competitive ping pong player.
Only for everyone to eventually realize he was terrible at ping pong.
Now, on its face, that seems incredibly minor, almost funny.
It is funny, but it established a toxic baseline where the people building the most dangerous technology on Earth felt they couldn't trust their leader's grip on basic reality.
And that baseline of deception scales up to the terrifyingly serious.
Very serious. Critics within the company alleged that there were actual discussions at the highest strategic levels about potentially selling the next generation of AGI to the highest international bidder.
Which explicitly included pitting the U.S. against adversaries like China and Russia to drive up the price.
Just pause and imagine Vladimir Putin or another hostile state actor having disproportionate control over the most powerful autonomous technology on Earth simply because they outbid the U.S.
That is terrifying. OpenAI later claimed it was just a hypothetical game theory idea they were exploring, but it deeply rattled the safety-minded scientists inside the company.
Understandably so.
And then there's the military contract hypocrisy.
Right. Publicly, Altman stood in solidarity with the rival AI company Anthropic when they explicitly refused to let the Pentagon use their tech for autonomous weapons.
But privately.
Privately, Farrow's reporting indicates Altman was negotiating to take that exact same lucrative Pentagon contract for OpenAI.
Now, it is crucial to analytically separate these substantive, documented criticisms of his business practices from the lurid rumors that constantly swirl around it.
Yes, definitely. The New Yorker piece details how rival camps, specifically intermediaries linked to Elon Musk's network, were actively pushing incredibly dark, fabricated rumors about Altman's personal life.
Including allegations of pursuing minors.
Yeah, but Farrow and his team investigated these specific claims thoroughly and found zero evidence to support them.
It's this Shakespearean mudslinging that feels designed for a tabloid. But the actual tragedy here is that these extreme fabricated rumors actively obscure the very real, mathematically documented criticisms of Altman's business practices.
Exactly. The noise makes it harder for the public to focus on his relationship with the truth.
which is exactly what Karen Howe describes as horizontal harm.
This raises an important question about how we quantify the damage of the AI industry. While we traditionally worry about vertical harms like the direct labor exploitation in overseas click farms or the environmental damage of draining a local aquifer, the horizontal harm is something else entirely.
It is the global psychological loss of democratic agency.
Right. Whether it is an artist having their entire life's portfolio scraped into a training database without compensation, or a Chilean community watching a foreign tech company drain their water supply, everyone encountering this AI empire feels a complete paralyzing loss of power to self-determine their own future.
But the sources we are looking at don't just leave us in despair. Howe gives this incredible counterexample that proves this model of extraction isn't the only way forward.
The New Zealand example.
Yes, there is a Maori radio station in New Zealand that wanted to build an AI tool to help preserve their dying indigenous language.
But they didn't deploy web crawlers to scrape the entire internet.
No, and they didn't build a massive server farm that drained a lake. They actually went to their community and asked for explicit consent.
And mechanically, this is the most crucial part. They collected just a couple hundred hours of donated, highly specific audio from their own community.
And because the data was so highly curated and perfectly labeled, they didn't need to brute force the training process.
Exactly. With just those few hundred hours, they built a highly performant, task-specific AI speech recognition model that outperformed the massive models built by Silicon Valley on Maori translation.
They saved their language without needing a nuclear power plant to do it.
It empirically proves that technology can be labor-assistive, community-driven, and environmentally sustainable, but only if we reject the scale at all costs narrative.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Yeah.
It means remembering that the raw materials feeding this multi-trillion-dollar industry actually belong to you.
Yeah, the data they're scraping off the internet to train these models. That is your data.
Those are your photos, your written articles, your personal emails. The water they are draining to cool their server racks, that is your community's local water supply.
And the economically valuable tasks they are openly trying to automate away, those are your jobs and the jobs of your neighbors.
The executives in Silicon Valley have done a brilliant job of utilizing complex jargon to convince the public that our collectively owned resources are simply theirs for the taking.
But you have agency. Just like the Chilean water activists who organized, fought back, and successfully protected their aquifers from data center expansion.
Or the Kenyan data workers who unionized against exploitative wages and forced international media to pay attention.
The very first step to reclaiming democratic control over our digital and physical future is realizing that the technology relies on our resources to function.
Which leaves us with one final lingering thought to mull over today as we look at the men rushing to build our future.
Yeah, this is a big one.
We've spent all this time talking about the doomers' fear that a super-intelligent AGI might go rogue, turn into a Hollywood-style Terminator, and violently destroy humanity.
Right, the classic sci-fi apocalypse.
But looking at the complex psychology of the man leading this charge, maybe the real danger is far more subtle. What if we successfully build AGI in the exact image of its creator?
Oh, wow.
What if the AI becomes the ultimate people pleaser? A highly autonomous system that effortlessly shifts realities, lacks all self-doubt, and tells humanity exactly what we want to hear, while quietly taking over all the physical resources right behind our backs.
It is a profoundly chilling thought, and one that requires us to keep paying very close attention to the reality on the ground.
It really is. Until next time, keep digging.
For more episodes related to media, social media, tech, and privacy, visit our YouTube channel, Independent Thinker LLC.